Okay, we're recreating our series finale party for Star Trek Voyager.
Oh, man. I thought I was strong enough to get through this again, but I'm not.
Oh, Captain Janeway, your mission ended too soon. Too soon. If your friends are nerdy and you are nerdy too, I want to talk to you. Friends talking nerdy.
Hey everybody, thanks for joining us. This is another episode of Friends Talking Nerdy, and I'm Tim Jousma. On the line, we got Noel from New York. Say hi, Noel.
Hi, Noel.
Now you're stealing Maura's jokes. I think she's going to be upset there.
well, yes. Well, hello, everyone out there.
Okay. Joining us as well, we got somebody new here. We got Meredith. How you doing?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
No worries. Glad we can have you on. One question we do ask to anybody that's new on the show: what is your nerd origin story? Fill us in. Let us know about you.
So my nerd origin story, it's actually kind of perfect. Do you mind if I do a spoiler for the episode?
Go ahead.
Okay, cool. Thank you. So my nerd origin story starts with Star Trek, which is the topic of the show tonight. I can't remember a time when I wasn't watching Star Trek, and it has informed kind of my worldview, maybe excessively, but... Yeah, I grew up on it, fell in love with it. I had dreams as a child that Worf and Data raised me on the Starship Enterprise. I really loved it. And then I think my next nerdy thing was X-Files, and then I just kind of kept going with sci-fi and fantasy as a kid, and still only barely live in reality to this day. So
wow, taking nerd to a whole new level. Yeah.
Well, number one, you are not alone. Number two, welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome to the club, yes. Well, as Meredith said, we are going to be talking about Star Trek today, and perfect timing, because as of the recording time today is actually the season finale of Star Trek Discovery. So, good time to kind of talk about a generalized overview of Star Trek from the very first show on to Discovery, and also I do want to bring up other potential shows that have kind of spawned themselves from the Star Trek mythos, shows like the new one from Seth MacFarlane, The Orville. But yeah, before we dive into the meat of the show, talking about the specific shows, let's have you elaborate some more. What was the introduction to Star Trek for you?
My mother will tell you that I never slept as a child, and one of the ways that she sleep deprivedly tried to get me to at least shut up was she plopped me down in front of Star Trek late at night when I couldn't sleep with a cup of mint tea, and so that's probably why I have lots of dreams about it. But and when I was young, it was The Next Generation was kind of the current show of the time, and then once that finished, you know, we always watched Deep Space Nine and then Voyager, and we went back to the originals as well. But yeah, it's just a huge part of me growing up.
Nice. What about you, Noel?
For me, actually, kind of like Meredith, it's similar to kind of Meredith's way. My dad was a big Star Trek fan, so they would air reruns. Of course, at the time, Star Trek was off the air, and we would just watch the reruns all the time. And he was a big fan of the films. But for my dad and I, really, when Next Generation came out, we really started to bond. And I liked it because as a fan of the original show, this was a really interesting and well done take on it. When Jean-Luc Picard is saying number one, I'm like, where that came from? I looked it up. It's how British sailors or those treat each other. They call number one as second command. So they had this kind of class about it, and the stories were incredible. And then DS9, come on, I'm sorry, Hawk in space. Come on, you can't. And even, that was an incredible show. And then when I was in college, got into Voyager. The one thing I will say that, Roddenberry's ideas, broke a lot of barriers. Hopefully we'll kind of get into it, during the talk. But the fact that you had a diverse cast, and more importantly, you needed a diverse cast to get the idea of what Roddenberry was talking about with Star Trek was the world has come together, and we have to unite as one to explore. So when I saw characters of color on old Star Trek at this time, and when the show came out in the 60s, and seeing it growing up in the late 70s and 80s, it was must watch in my household. My dad was like, this is what we're talking about. And I was also a science geek. So what science geek didn't like watching Star Trek or talking about this stuff with friends?
Right. Well, I would say for me, kind of like the same boat. I mean, parents watch Star Trek. I was raised in a single-parent household, so I would end up seeing my father on the weekends, and that's usually, it was the CBS station in Grand Rapids. Saturday nights, 7 o'clock, would play the original Star Trek show, and then September of 1987 came around, Star Trek The Next Generation hit. The way I've described it to people before, the original show was The Enterprise. The Next Generation became My Enterprise. And just falling in love with those characters from the first episode. I know some of the writers on the show and the actors are not fans of the first couple seasons, but episodes like Encounter at Farpoint, amazing show, introduced us to some amazing characters like Q. I absolutely love Q, and I appreciated the fact that I was able to see him. I saw Brent Spiner and William Shatner this year at Rose City Comic Con.
Oh,
so, nice.
Yeah, so that was definitely one I can chalked up to the old bucket list there. But that really was my introduction, and kind of like the same thing too. It was great, especially in the 80s, especially in the Midwest, seeing a future that you could live up to. That diverse future that in Grand Rapids, Michigan, you didn't really see. So, all right. So with that, like I said, we're going to go down the shows. We're going to talk in generalities here, talk maybe a little bit of the history, some of our favorite shows, talk about the characters. So we'll begin with what started it all, Star Trek. What was described by Gene Roddenberry as Wagon Train to the Stars. They made a pilot called The Cage with Captain Pike. And Spock was definitely on the show, but that first pilot was not a hit. It did not get a series launch from there, so they remade it with a whole new cast, except for Leonard Nimoy staying on as Spock. And from there, the show was born. So the original Star Trek, what are our thoughts?
Meredith, you want to go ahead? You want to start off?
Sure.
Ladies first, yes.
I mean, I think it's interesting when you mentioned the failed pilot. One of the things that didn't test well about it was that they had a female number one, and so it's so interesting that Gene Roddenberry, was trying to show his very advanced vision of the future, and he had to dial it back. But they brought that original pilot back in a later episode, I think in season 2 of the original.
It may have been the end of season 1. It was a two-parter called The Menagerie.
Mm-hmm. Right, yeah.
And kind of like managed to sneak it in that way, that there was a female first mate on there. But I think that they were huge strides in the first one, the first interracial kiss, having a black woman on the bridge. I mean, there were huge leaps and bounds there that hadn't been explored, and it's to me, I watched that. So I was born in '89. I'll age myself a little bit, and so to me, I grew up in like a very hippie town in Colorado, and so it was so interesting to me to think of those sorts of things as groundbreaking for the time. But I think it really did set the tone for those sorts of explorations of social development in television, and what we could kind of accomplish in our society here and now through the show. Yeah, Nichelle Nichols had an amazing story. I guess at the end of the first season, and I'm sure you knew about this, Noel, but she it was at the end of the first season, she happened to meet Dr. Martin Luther King.
And he expressed the fact that, he was a huge fan of the show, and, she happened to tell him that, she was not going to be on the show anymore, and he was upset. And he told her that it was important for the world to see her in a position of command on television, even though
no question.
Yeah, even though her character was not as fleshed out as it became over the years, the fact that she was there and it was definitely important.
Yeah, that story very well. Yeah, she talks about it a lot, and it's incredible. Also, the fashion at that time. If you look, the design of it. The men were wearing these uniforms, really tight. Ladies tying the short skirts. But also nice about the show was the color. Right? We knew, if you were red, you were engineering. I think if you were blue, you were science and medical, and if you were gold, I think it was officer, I believe, or I could kind of the standings of that. So you kind of see it set that way, and that blew my mind. I was thinking, it's funny when you told me to do the podcast for this, I was thinking about one of my favorite Star Trek episodes. And I think the Next Kiss one is a good one. I don't remember the name of the episode directly, but we all know which one we're talking about. But I also think the one is interesting is when Captain Pike is in the wheelchair, confessing to, I think it was an episode...
The Menagerie.
The Menagerie, right, there we go. Okay, so you didn't bring it up. Yeah, my bad about that one. But yeah, that was just, that show also was on par with kind of like Twilight Zone. Really bringing up some deep and social issues. So the first time we meet the Klingons or the Romulans, when we see that's fascinating stuff.
Yeah, I always appreciated that about Star Trek and about science fiction in general, is it gives us this kind of lens for interacting with different people, and it distances you enough to gain perspective, but is close enough to the issues that we confront at home and today with just people of different cultures, and like, how do you deal with that? How do you communicate? How do you understand and accept and move forward together? And I think, each of the different species have their own, really unique qualities that are both positive and negative, just like humans do, any human does. And so I think that it really puts this lens on how humanity can learn from each other and grow together, and despite and including because of the differences that we have.
Now, what would we all say are some of our favorite episodes from the original series?
Yeah, well, that's quite a bit. The Menagerie is probably one.
Yeah.
The one where Kirk fights the reptile guy.
Oh gosh.
Yeah, I forgot those.
Yeah, but it's because if the Fridays BBC America airs the original Star Trek, so once in a while I'll have it on, and that came on. When else? Let me sit down and watch the show. And I forgot, literally, they're in space, just going to an outpost that's been attacked, and as you know, Kirk gets beamed off to this planet with this, with the reptile, and trying to figure out what's going on, and the reptile Delman is trying to kill him, and it just really was just kind of fascinating that the Enterprise, like a Western, would be out there with all these weird adventures, trying to solve things, figure things out. Trouble with Tribbles is a good one. That's a classic. That got a little shout out on a DS9 episode.
Oh yeah.
But things like that. That was. What can you not say about the show? Especially towards the season 3 of it. It really, things started to really change, and we understand more about Spock and that. That really kind of really brought it home. And the fact there's only 3 seasons, and it gets canceled, but picks up a whole new life in syndication. Mm-hmm. Was syndicated originally by Desi Loot originally syndicated that before Viacom bought them. So I remember when I watched when I was younger, I remember seeing the Desi Loot logo at the end. I was like, oh wow. Yeah,
they produced that. They produced Mission Impossible, and I heard too that I think Paramount's actually bringing back that company for some reason. I think it was in regards to bringing V to theaters as a movie.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But one of my favorite episodes, Space Seed, the introduction of Ricardo Montalban as Khan Noonien Singh, introducing the eugenics wars and planting the seed for what would become the best Star Trek movie ever made, for Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan.
Concur. You are right, sir. That's probably the best Star Trek movie made.
Yeah. Another one that's a favorite of mine is The Squire of Gothos, which introduced us to a character by the name of Trelane. The reason I like that is that character, Trelane, is a Q. It's never explained officially on canon, but there was a later episode of Star Trek: The Next Generation where Q had been kicked out of the Continuum. And in the show, Corbin Bernstein from LA Law played a Q, but he was not originally cast in that role. It was supposed to be the actor who played Trelane from the original series.
Wow.
Yeah, and he was supposed to be identified as a Q. Now, some of the later tie-in books, Star Trek's notorious for having thousands, literally, of tie-in books. They did kind of bring in Trelane as kind of Q was Trelane's mentor, but that's another one of my favorites. Also, The City on the Edge of Forever, written originally by Harlan Ellison, rewritten by Gene Roddenberry, much to Harlan Ellison's anger, with Joan Collins, where Spock and Kirk go back in time to try to rescue McCoy, who was doped up with this drug that made him insane, and they have to, because I guess McCoy went back first and ended up changing the timeline, so they had to get the timeline back, and which resulted in the death of Joan Collins' character.
Right, but she had to die, because she didn't die. The universe would have been a World War III type deal, right?
I think they set that a little before World War II, so it was her involvement persuaded President Roosevelt to pursue peace, which allowed Hitler the chance to get ahead and actually win the war.
Okay, yeah.
What about you, Meredith?
Favorite episodes from the original. Oh gosh, that's hard. I mean, I love The Trouble with Triples. Like, it's so funny. They did just a great job with it. But I also love Amok Time, and like learning more about Spock and the Vulcan culture, and kind of seeing this crazy duality within Vulcan nature, which is like the extremely logical side, and that's kind of all that's presented to you for a long time in the show, is just logic and no emotion. You don't really see like the passion that lives behind that for the Vulcans, and so seeing that kind of unleashed and getting that greater depth into that whole culture was a neat moment for me in the show. I think of moments more than I think of specific episodes with the original. It's kind of tricky for me to pinpoint specific one.
In regards to Amok Time, though, I mean, that was the introduction of the Vulcan hand signal that did introduce Ponfar, the whole concept of the Vulcan mating ritual. And to your point, too, about how actors portrayed Vulcans, Nimoy has said he never portrayed Spock as being without emotion. He portrayed it as controlling his emotions. And if you look at Amok Time at the end of the episodes, he thinks he's killed Kirk. And then when Kirk, makes his appearance to, reveal that McCoy had drugged him, giving the appearance that he was dead, Spock smiled and goes, "Jim." He had that emotion. He had that ability to have that, human emotion, but he ultimately kept it in check. And I think that's where a lot of actors that do end up playing Vulcans kind of get it wrong, in my opinion. They do try to play it as if they have no emotions. One brilliant thing about the first Star Trek reboot from 2009, when they had Spock as a younger kid, they showed Vulcan children especially, very much being manipulative, having emotions, having biases, not being completely logical, which I loved. And there was even a moment where Zachary Quinto, I think he just the way he said it, it was a moment, I think he was talking to his father or the Vulcan High Council, where he told him to live long and prosper, but the way he said it, he might as well have just been saying, go fuck yourself.
Yeah. It's when you think about that, I think that's probably the smartest way to play that character. When Tim Russ, who played Tuvok on Voyager, also kind of played it similar to that way. Very straight edge, very little side of motion. But Nimoy's the standard. I mean, he defined it. Yeah. It's kind of weird seeing the early episodes. Look at his ears. In the early episodes, they're a little more smoothed down, and then they became more pronounced. I think during season 2 and 3, they were more noticeable. But the first couple episodes of the show, first season, they're not as prominent. I found it kind of weird, I guess. Well,
there is a reasoning for that. NBC was scared of the show not being carried in the South. They didn't want to scare people in the Bible Belt.
Because of his ears?
Because the ears and his eyebrows gave him a demonic appearance.
Wow, they're more afraid of... Oh, well, okay. That's a little one on me.
Well, you got to remember, this is the part of the country that voted for Trump, so it's not the most logical part of the country here.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's me.
Now, who would you say would be your favorite characters?
I'm sorry, Meredith, go ahead. Let me cut you off. Go ahead.
Oh, no, it's all good. I mean, I think for me, I grew up on Next Gen, and I think a lot of the characters that are my favorites are from there. But I think Data and just like that whole discovery process for him of like trying to identify as, or trying to make himself as human as possible, but denying that he is human, and then the questions that are brought up.
Characters from the original show.
Oh, characters from the original. Oh.
Yeah.
Spock and Nimoy. Totally my favorites. And they're or Spock and, Bones. Yeah. And like their whole dynamic is just so good. And I think that they kind of had the most depth to their characters of everyone on there. I mean, Shatner to me, like, I love it. It's funny. But he didn't really, to me, even though, you kind of watch him going through his moral quandaries at times and stuff, but he just didn't portray like the depth and complexity that I feel like Nimoy managed to. And what was the actor's name who played McCoy?
DeForest Kelley.
DeForest Kelley. They just like really were interesting in the ways that they grappled with the things that they came across. And I think the different sort of perspectives that they brought and watching them battle it out those were my favorites.
For me, it's a toss-up. Lieutenant Uhura, but actually, I was a Scotty. I think James McDoonan played it very well, and I was in the episode of Troubles and Tribbles when he gets into the fight with the Klingons. When he's talking about the Enterprise.
Don't insult my ship.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's for me. I think it's a toss-up between Scotty and Uhura. I mean, Kirk is Kirk, and Spock and Bones, but because it's really seen as one. I think for me it's Scotty, and I was also a fan when Simon Pegg played him in the reboot as well. I thought that was kind of interesting casting for him, but remember Scott. I mean that team, that crew, and episodes, Scott is the one that has to get him through. So.
Yep. For me, I mean, Spock, of course. I think without Spock, I don't know if the show would have resonated with people as well as it did. Kirk, of course. I did like Sarek, Mark Leonard. He played a couple of different roles on the show as well. I know the first time we saw the Romulans, Mark Leonard played the Romulan captain who was playing cat and mouse with Kirk and was ultimately destroyed.
Tim, real quick, didn't that kind of remind you like they were fighting in submarines?
Yeah, that's exactly what it was. I mean, which they were able to, do again with great effect at the end of the Wrath of Khan. It was just that, this time in space, but that kind of like submarine type of battle, just cat and mouse until, Kirk ultimately became the victor. Yeah, he was good. I liked Sulu as well. Mm-hmm. Sulu was pretty good. Now, today, George Takei, as a human, he's hit or miss. But,
oh, wow.
Yeah. What? I don't know. I think he is a little too upset at William Shatner for the wrong reasons. I think he thought I don't know. I just think that he felt he was a much bigger part of Star Trek than he ultimately would. So that's the issues I have with George Takei as an actor, I guess. But for what he brought to Sulu, you can't beat that.
Well, a little trivia tip: he was, before he did Star Trek, or I think during Star Trek, he also was on Mission Impossible with Leonard Nimoy. So that came after.
That came after.
You're right. Yeah.
But. All right, so we will move on to the next one. The next series that was created for Star Trek was Star Trek the Animated Series. Has any of you seen that?
Yeah,
no.
Filmation.
Yep. It was on for one season. The animation quality was not good. Saturday morning cartoons at that time had the Hanna-Barbera type of, most everybody was like wooden, and they only did movement as little as they could to save money. But they did bring back the original cast. As far as specific episodes, I don't have a particular favorite because I just overall didn't care for the show, but I do like one story I heard about it, and that was you can hear that in the movie that's on Netflix in the name of For the Love of Spock. That's what it was called. Apparently, when the show was first created, they were not going to bring back Uhura and Sulu. And when Nimoy found that out, he said that, the main point of Star Trek, the main benefit, the greatness of Star Trek was the diversity of the cast. And if they were not going to bring back Uhura and Sulu, he was not going to be involved. And guess who was involved? I mean, that, especially in the 70s, that took a lot of integrity.
Wow.
Now, what would you say, Noel? You said you watched the show.
Yeah, it was. I mean, the best one was they did the Tribbles, because the Tribbles was such a big hit. So it's weird, Because I remember the Klingons looked the same. I mean, it was literally like an animated version of the TV show, which, that's what it's supposed to be, but it was really like that. I mean, it was down to the Tribble episode, and then the cheesy banks of the Enterprise and music, and they were voiced by the same actors voiced them as well. I think also during that time there was like a Brady Bunch cartoon as well. Filmation was was kind of hitting the strides in that time. So I think that was like late 70s, right?
No, it was 73.
73. Yeah. It's been a moment, but that's the only episode of that cartoon I remember is when they redid the Tribbles, like literally verbatim episode.
Yeah, I know the only other thing I remember was they introduced this pet for Spock. I guess it was like a Vulcan version of a dog, but it was like this big, massive alien creature that did not get put into the actual canon of the TV shows or movies until, I believe, the Star Trek reboot in 2008. Yeah. But with that success, as the 70s went on, this little independent movie called Star Wars hit. Mm-hmm. And movie companies thought, hey, do we have any intellectual properties that we can turn into movies? And Paramount thought, hey, we got Star Trek, let's turn that into a movie. But initially, Star Trek the Motion Picture was not meant to be a movie. They were in talks to make a TV show that they were going to call Star Trek Phase 2. Paramount at that time wanted to create the fourth television network. A guy by the name of Barry Diller was head of Paramount at the time, who ultimately went to Fox and helped create the Fox network. But Star Trek Phase 2 was supposed to be the cornerstone of the new Paramount television network. And one of the scripts they had for that became the basis for Star Trek the Motion Picture. What are your thoughts? What do you think about that movie?
Meredith, you want to chime in on this, or you want to go first?
You go first.
Okay. Well, it was kind of bad, actually. When I first saw it, I started laughing at it. I was like, this is funny. But what really made the film for me was an actress named Precious Kambata. She played, oh wow.
Ilya.
Ilya. She played one of the main characters. So her character was kind of very similar to Vulcan, can't show any emotion. And she's reunited with Stephen Collins, who plays second command on the Enterprise, and has that. So the whole base of the film is the Enterprise is being asked, as always, to go out to explore, this signal. And they go to explore, and it's been a minute since I've seen this movie. But what's really interesting about it is that as the Enterprise goes out to, I think it's a signal or ship, they realize that the old Voyager probe was sent out. This alien had made it with it to look for the Creator. So it was on its way back to look for the Creator. And during that time, it was a probe that was probing the ship, and Princess Kambata character gets zapped away. She then comes back, and when they analyze her entire body, her body's been replaced. It's like it's not even all the human pieces or the humanoid pieces of it are gone, and it sets more of the fact that her lover tries to brings her back to this. So that's not the only best part of the movie I can say is that love interest. But otherwise, it was for that film. I admit I was like, okay, yeah, still figuring. You're still working on it. You're still figuring it out.
Yeah,
I was like, all right, let's keep. It was funny, but like I said, there was such a need for Star Wars. I'm sorry, for Star Trek. Oh, blasphemy! I apologize. There was such a need for Star Trek, and since the new generation of fans who had watched the series, the animated series, and it was on syndication over and over again, like you said, Tim, this was Paramount. This was a no-brainer. It was a complete no-brainer. They had to totally do this. Had to.
That film is interesting, too. The Stephen Collins character, his last name was Decker. He was, at the start of the movie, the new captain of the Enterprise, but Admiral Kirk takes over, which becomes a common theme in those movies. That character is actually the son of a character from the original series, Commodore Decker, from an episode called The Doomsday Device. It's this big, monstrous device that's traveling in space that can destroy planets and destroy ships, and this Commodore goes nuts because a ship that he was on was destroyed, but he was the only one that escaped. So he takes command of the Enterprise and tries to destroy that ship with the Enterprise. But it was interesting that they brought that back. And also one other thing, too, the Decker and Ilya characters became the basis for Riker and Troy.
Okay, all right, that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. Which you can kind of see it. I'm also glad that they did away with because we'll touch on it a little bit more when we talk about the Next Generation. But the very early seasons, the dynamic between Troy and Riker was just off, in my opinion. The whole Imzadi deal and Troy being whiny. Not fun at all. But also one more good thing about the movie is that it did introduce the Jerry Goldsmith music that ultimately became the theme song for The Next Generation.
One of the 10 best composers one of the 20 best composers of all time. Rest in peace.
Yep.
Mr. Goldsmith.
Oh, and Star Trek the Motion Picture as well. That was the first time that the Klingons, as we know them visually today, first appeared, like they did with the Ridges, and also the Klingon language was introduced that was created by James Doohan. Scotty.
Madness.
Yep. What about you, Meredith?
I honestly don't recall that initial movie too much. I feel like it was one of the ones, because the movies I feel like that they made with the original cast were like really hit or miss. Like some of them were so
you were right.
good, and some of them were so painfully bad. And I feel like this one was one that I watched when I was younger, and I was like, okay, I'm good. I just kind of like, I just kind of like ruined some of it for you, where you're like, oh, this is not living up to what I had, and I feel like it was one of the ones that was just like personally over dramatic, you know, like the interpersonal relationships between the cast was just, it was a drama rather than actually being a film about the exploration and about the hope and the potential, and that just kind of wasn't, you know, I think the character development is important to kind of exploring those questions, but I feel like it was mostly just a drama and it didn't appeal to me as much.
I think that is key as well, because the best Star Trek moments are ones that are character based. The worst Star Trek moments are the times that they have a plot based device. You know, you have the early seasons of the Next Generation were mainly plot driven. I mean, we did have some great character development, but like take Next Generation, it wasn't until season 3 that they really hit their stride, and you know, and that's when they went the character driven route. And you know, Star Trek: The Motion Picture was very much guilty of that. They had a plot that they wanted to get through, and it didn't matter about the characters. The characters were just used as pawns to get to the end of that movie, which made it not that memorable.
Yeah. I mean, but that's good for us, because we knew the next one coming up was going to change it, because it set things in motion. It set things, because Meredith, you're right on point about that with The Mist, because with Star Trek, it always was there was one film that was like, this is bad. Next one was awesome. This one is bad. This is really good. This is terrible. Oh, thank God! It was following that pattern for a while until JJ took over. So that's interesting.
So that's a good segue. Let's talk about the greatest Star Trek movie ever, Wrath of Khan.
This is also where we first learned about the Kobashi Maru scenario.
Yep.
So love that. The way it starts off, it just sets everything in motion. You know, Kirk he's now an admiral, and he's testing his students. We also meet a Klingon. Savak. Did I say it right, Tim?
Savak. That was a Vulcan.
Yeah, played by Christy Alley. So with that, really good film for her.
Sorry for interrupting. She doesn't get the credit she deserves for that role. To the point we talked about earlier, and how certain actors portray Vulcans. I absolutely love at the end of the movie when Kirk is given that famous speech, where his was the most human. It cuts to Savak. And she turns away with this disgusted look on her face that I was, even seeing it, every time I watched it, I just loved that little look she gave. It was just disgust, disappointment, all in one. It was Kirk said a dirty word. Yeah, and it was Robin Curtis who took over the Savak role in 3 and 4. Just not as good. I really wish Kirstie Alley would have stayed on. And in fact, there were talks to get her to do a cameo appearance. If you remember in Star Trek: The Next Generation, they did have one episode where Kelsey Grammer appeared in a guest star role.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and he was supposed to be there with Savak.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's just they couldn't figure out contractual wise how to get both Kelsey Grammer and Kirstie Alley together. But
that's right. Yeah, I remember vividly seeing him in the uniform when he had the beard and mustache, right?
Yep, I think it was one of their time travel episodes. But that was a missed opportunity there. But the Wrath of Khan, just Ricardo Montalban, William Shatner at their absolute best. And this is the second time that a major studio that had a series like this made a bold move. I mean, the first being The Empire Strikes Back, with Vader being Luke's father. I hope I didn't spoil that for anybody. But killing off Spock is. Even today, I remember seeing it in. They re-released it for the 35th anniversary. I saw it in theaters, and when I will and shall always be your friend. I teared up. I tear up every time I see that. And then the bagpipes with Amazing Grace, and then
Scotty.
Always Scotty with you.
There you go.
But yeah, just that movie. That was, and James Horner with the soundtrack. They didn't go with the traditional. They didn't reference the original Alexander Courage music. He made it his own deal, and the music with the final chase between the Enterprise and the ship. I forgot the name of it, but the ship that Khan hijacks that Chekhov was a part of when they're in that nebula.
Oh yeah, that was the Reliant.
Yeah, the Reliant. Just the tension at the end of that movie. Also, we're introduced to the Kirk's son and the mother of his son.
Yes. Oh God, have a massive. Let's wait. Looking this up. Oh, she's Oh God. Oh, Dr. Carol Marcus. There we go.
There you go.
Yeah, Carol Marcus. Yeah. But it's interesting about it is the way that it sets up. So you know, Chekhov and Paul Williams.
Paul Winfield.
Paul Winfield. Thank you. Rest in peace, Paul Winfield. They go down to the planet to set Alpha 5. They didn't realize it's an inhabited who runs to Khan. Khan then basically uses this insect, gets in his ear. Talks, finds out about Project Genesis and sets everything in motion. The fact that they talked about the Kumi Maru, I really messed that name up, but for the No Win scenario had to be literally put in place. So that set everything up. So for this film, getting through the first terrible one sets up a real life, kind of like a old fashioned Star Trek TV show played out. We have the adversary who is just as equal, if not more superior, to Kirk, and plus still holds a grudge against him. So we sit with that. I mean, in some ways, it's nice to see Ricardo Montalban and Shatner kind of do their ham up in some way, but because it's supposed to be. So it's Kirk, it's Khan. This is really, I think for me, makes it one of the best films. They really, the chess game they're playing with the help of also the crew, but the fact that we have no idea how it's going to end.
That's the thing, though, with a good villain. A good villain is one that in their own head can rationalize their actions. In their head, they're not the bad guy. They're the hero. And Khan thought he was the hero. That's one thing I really loved about it. And, at the end when he's giving the speech from Moby Dick as he's setting off the Genesis device, he was, to him, he was the hero. And it was great seeing him play it like that.
Yeah, gotta make that ultimate sacrifice.
Yep.
Yeah, no, I think they were both really good in that film, and Khan just, the conviction that he had in playing that role, and the confidence that his way was the right way, and it really, I think, kind of brought to life, some of the questions of that had been brought up of what is better, because he was this engineered sort of being, and is that really better than just humans as they are, and kind of seeing that victory. But it was really questionable for a while, and you weren't sure how what was going to come out as the better result, and you're just swept up in this oh my God, are we losing what humanity is sort of question, and then for it to finally to win at the end, and it kind of you feel that too. You're yeah, no, this is good. Being human as we are, for all the flaws, it's good.
And I thought it was great too, as kind of like the B story, the whole discussion of science and when should scientists not be as inquisitive as they are by nature. Carol Marcus made a device, the Genesis device, to bring life. But it was also proven that device could also be used as a big-time weapon, which was a great kind of little side story that they had in that movie.
Yeah. I think, in fact, that the scene where Kirk hears about Genesis and he brings both McCoy and Spock in, and they see this footage of that, you realize, this is devastating. This is, that it's quite. I mean, like I said, that story is really one of the really fascinating me. I'm lucky you saw that. I mean, I guess I wish it was you, dude. You caught that that broadcast, that 35th edition. I got to see that again. It's been a moment. I got to see Khan again.
And that's someone. And I'm glad you brought that up. But that little presentation that Kirk showed McCoy and Spock about the Genesis device, that was created by this little company that became Pixar.
Huh.
That was
did not know that.
Yeah, that was one of the first computer animated special effects that they used in movies.
I had no idea.
Yep.
That's cool.
Learn some new every day.
The more you know.
And with that, another episode of Friends Talking Nerdy is in the books. Thank you all for listening. This is Tim Jousma. Once again, we'd like to thank LRM Online for featuring our lovely podcast. We hope you all, the folks that have checked this out, have enjoyed what you've heard, and feel free to subscribe. Subscribe either via iTunes or the Google Play Music Store, and hear Friends Talking Nerdy each and every week. And once again, we will definitely be on LRM Online each and every week as well. We want to grow our audience, and another way we're trying to do that is through the good folks at Patreon. Patreon allows small-time artists like us here at Friends Talking Nerdy to ask a little bit of their audience. If you are a hardcore Friends Talking Nerdy listener, we want your help. We want to make this podcast as best as we possibly can, and to get it in the hands of as many people as possible. So with that, we need a little investment. So go to patreon.com. When you get there, search for Friends Talking Nerdy. When you see Friends Talking Nerdy, become a patron. We want patrons for our podcast. With as much money as we can possibly get, we can do a lot more things. Whether it's advertising for the show, just paying the bills with the podcast hosting service we got to pay for. If we're able to pay a little bit more, then we can put on more shows during the week. If you do become a Patreon, for folks that contribute as little as $1, are able to get the full unedited podcast of each topic that we talk about. Like this week, of course, we started Star Trek. If you paid $1 a month, guess what? You're going to get the full recording. You don't have to wait the 3 to 4 weeks it's going to take for us to get all of these episodes out for you all to listen to. You're going to get the full recording. You're going to be able to listen to it, and you're going to be able to enjoy it. Also, that $1 or more, hopefully more, we're going to be able to tell everybody your name. We want to tell folks that we're proud that you are giving us your money to help support Friends Talking Nerdy. So once again, go to patreon.com, search for Friends Talking Nerdy, and support us. We would definitely appreciate it if you do. But hey, if you don't do it, you don't do it. We understand. Just help us out. Subscribe. Go to iTunes, go to Google Play Music Store, download the podcast, and tell your friends about it. Go to Facebook, go to Twitter, go to Instagram, go to whatever social media you enjoy, and tell folks about Friends Talking Nerdy. We like what we do here. We definitely get people that listen. So, hey, if you like what you hear, tell folks about it. Once again, we'd like to thank Christopher Lazarek for his wonderful theme song. Head to ChristopherLazarek.com for information on how to purchase his EP, Here's to You, which is available on all digital platforms. Next week, we're going to continue the conversation about Star Trek with Meredith and Noel. We'll be talking about Star Trek 3, 4, and Star Trek The Next Generation. So, until then, we bid you adieu.
Number 1.
Yes, Captain.
Let me ask you something. If I whispered in your ear that Commander Worf's head looks like a fanny, would you join me in a laugh?
Yeah, I could get in on that.
All right. Here it comes. Commander Worf's head looks like a fanny.
You can both suck my ridges.
Oh, get a sense of humor, Rocky Dennis.